Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, we start off here looking at the last 3 days of total accumulated precipitation, and as anticipated, the little shortwave that came out of the Four Corners area has moved across the parts of Texas and Oklahoma and is now sitting over parts of Missouri, Arkansas, and this section of the Mississippi River. And as we look right now, this is where the rain is early this morning. This was valid about 4 o'clock in the morning here, so widespread scattered showers here across a section of our southern region. And as this little system moves through, we can kind of see it pretty well here when we look at the surface wind map. There is a cold front behind this, so we can see the winds kind of coming out of the north here across parts of Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. And the weak little circulation is still sitting right in through here about midday. So it is funneling in a decent amount of moisture, and right in through this area is I think we're going to expect to see maybe our heaviest precipitation out of this system over the weekend. Now you're probably looking at that large system that's sitting and spinning off of the west coast of the United States, and it's impressive, but I'll tell you something, that's actually not the main catalyst for the weather we're going to be seeing that's going to stretch right in through this corridor here over the next 10 days or so. So let's get to all of that. First, taking a look at how much precipitation we are expecting to fall here just in the next couple of days. So this takes us out. This is a total accumulated precipitation map from our high resolution NAM model that goes all the way out to around noon on Sunday. If we kind of zoom in here right in there to parts of Mississippi, we can see that the rainfall that we're starting off with this morning, we could have a couple of streaks in there where we could be getting over an inch of rainfall. But overall, this is a relatively light event, and it does break up as it moves over towards the southeast later on today as it kind of loses its upper level support. So that's kind of the near-term outlook of what we're going to be discussing here. This is what we really got to get into. All week long, we've been advertising that this corridor here was going to get very active as we moved into next week. And so what we're looking at here is the precipitation anomalies from the GFS model on the left and the European model on the right. Now, these are operational model runs. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to identify what the key differences are in these model runs so that we can understand what the potential is for each of these storm systems as they emerge next week, starting on Monday, and then we got a big one then coming in toward the end of the week. And the main thing that I want you to notice here is that the European model is pushing things farther south into the Gulf of Mexico and then letting them emerge here into the northeast, whereas the GFS is bringing stuff out of the Gulf much more quickly, developing a low here that drops down here into parts of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and then races off to the northeast. So the trajectory difference is what's critical with these next few systems, because they're going to have untapped moisture, not untapped, but no cap on the amount of moisture that's coming in out of the Gulf of Mexico. It just all depends on where the low is to how far north we get that precipitation. So if you're watching this in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, you see considerable differences. Same thing goes for parts of the Carolinas. So it's who gets it and who doesn't. Let's take a look at what this looks like when we compare our operational models. So on the left, I'm going to have an animation. This is the 0Z GFS, and on the right, I have the European from 0Z. So 0Z, by the way, that's 6 p.m. Central Time last night. This is the most recent model run available. We'll get a brand new one around 6 a.m. today, and I'm recording this about 4 o'clock, so we're ahead of that. Okay, as we animate this forward, let's just pause it right here. We saw system number 1 move through. Okay, watch it again here. And as that moves through, so we see here just light precipitation. Both models agree Friday morning through midday, moving through parts of the southeast, but very little accumulation expected once this gets out of Mississippi and into Alabama over towards Georgia and the Carolinas. Behind that, higher pressure moves in for your Saturday and Sunday. Then getting into Sunday afternoon. This is the thing we've been talking about. We've noticed that the high pressure cells are moving off the northeast in both models, and around it we're pulling in that moisture. So this is the beginning of where that moisture starts to come in. Now getting into Monday morning, which is what we see here, the low pressure system we've been kind of forecasting now for well over a week is taking shape that'll stretch between Oklahoma and Illinois. And because we're feeding moisture around that high sitting off of the over there in the North Atlantic, this is pumping in quite a bit. And both models agree that going from Monday into Tuesday, as the front gets dragged down into this area, you're going to be seeing more accumulating precipitation there. So now by Tuesday, this is where things get really quite interesting. On Tuesday, you're going to see this region stretching right in through basically eastern Texas over toward the mid-Atlantic, where a band of heavier precipitation is forecast. And what's happening here is we're sandwiching in the precipitation as high pressure builds in here, bringing in bitterly cold air into the north central plains. But on the south side of it, we're feeding with plenty of moisture. So there is a frontal boundary right in through here. And as that front pushes through, it does have the potential for putting some snow in the Appalachian Mountains. Now, it's going to be the depth of that cold air, as depth I mean how far to the south it gets, that's going to determine the position of the next low. So again, let me just take you back. This is Monday night, Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening. So that is our next time period of heavy precipitation through parts of our southern region. High pressure comes in, colder air behind. I'll show you that in just a few seconds. But as we move forward, watch that high slide right off the coast as well. So this is now next Thursday evening. Got a high sitting right there off of right over New Jersey. And the moisture begins to kick in behind it. Now, the big difference is the European model has got a much flatter trough at that point than the GFS. The GFS takes this thing and yanks it right out of the panhandle, starts pulling that moisture farther to the north, and brings this broad shield of precipitation in by next Friday morning. Look at the European. It's not as amplified. It's keeping all the moisture suppressed down here into the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the big difference maker, because as we go through that forecast for next Friday, a low emerges here in parts of the Mid-South, tracking through Tennessee and Kentucky. In the GFS, that's on the left. And in the European, still tucked away in the Gulf of Mexico. So GFS much wetter, much farther to the north with the system it's pulling out here. And by the way, the last 4 model runs for each model has looked almost exactly the same with this. So they're both kind of sticking to their guns on what's going to happen here. Now that pulls out and goes through. Now look at the difference between the GFS for next Saturday morning on the left and the European on the right. The European pulls a big low right through Florida into the Carolinas, whereas the GFS has already turned this thing into a nor'easter and got the front already off the coast. So again, we're out here to next Saturday evening, but that's a pretty substantial difference overall in these model runs. And I'll tell you something. If I come back to here on the GFS, this is next Friday, we have been seeing at times that this low has had enough cold air on the backside to be bringing in some snow into this area. And we're going to have to watch that very, very carefully as well. So to show you the difference, because these are our next 2 major systems that are coming through, to show you the differences in temperatures, take a look at this. Over here on the left, GFS, now we're looking at the ensemble temperature anomalies. And on the right, it is the European ensemble temperature anomalies. Pausing this again, taking a look here, this is Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So our little system sneaks through, and a little bit of cold air comes in behind it with both models. But it's the weekend we have to talk about. This is Saturday morning, temperature anomalies, differences from normal. Look at what happens on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, into Sunday morning. As the next system is trying to form here in the Central Plains and move over toward the Corn Belt, it's going to be drawing quite a bit of warmer air up with it. So the cooler anomalies leave the East Coast, the warmth returns behind it, and as the system shows up on Monday, widespread much above average temperatures on Monday for our southern region. But you ready for this? Behind it, these are again are temperature anomalies. This is Monday, getting into Tuesday morning. Look at the cold air coming in behind that low. Getting into Wednesday morning here, almost really good agreement here, and then getting into Thursday morning. So from Monday to Thursday, we're going to be seeing a pretty substantial drop in our temperatures overall. Now this is where the 2 models diverge. The GFS is going to anchor onto the cold and leave it across the eastern half of the United States, while the European model takes the trough, shoves it way up to Greenland, and kind of disconnects it from what's going on over the U.S. The U.S. leaves a longer trough all the way in through this area, while the the European has a little cutoff here and the deeper trough sitting in this area. So it's about separation in the way the models are handling this. So look, if I just keep playing this out, the European relaxes the pattern a bit, the GFS keeps it more amplified and much colder in our southern region as we move out here from the 14th of December all the way through the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. Okay, that's the 2 major modeling differences here. Let me summarize those temperatures for you. Over the next 5 days, remember we do have multiple chances of bringing in some warmer air, and that's because we're waiting on that low to develop here in the Corn Belt. We'll be to the south of it, bringing in quite a bit of warm air out ahead of that. But following that frontal passage on Tuesday, we're going to see the cold air really penetrate all the way through our southern region. So I got days 6 through 10 over here on the left from the GFS, and 6 through 10 over here on the right from the European model. And again, as we saw, the GFS keeps that cold air in place. whereas the European model has the deeper trough sitting here, and it kind of disconnects itself from the trough that's going to be sweeping through parts of Texas at this time. The GFS locks them together. That's our main model differences. Okay, bigger picture though, with the GFS ensemble showing up with the potential, 20 to 50% probability of grabbing some snow here, what I want you to see is with that next system that's emerging late next week, some of our model runs have been cold enough to bring some snow into parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky, maybe clipping northern Mississippi and Alabama. So we got to keep a close eye on that. And as this goes over the Appalachian Mountains, we could also pile up some snow here. European, which you saw was the warmer model, not showing up with that snowfall. Now again, this is way out there in the forecast, which means you'll hear me talk about it multiple times next week as well, but it's what I'm keeping an eye on, and I'll be watching closely over the weekend. Bigger picture, as you see the pattern really get going here into next week, does it slow down? And right now, I don't see it slowing down, and here's some of the main reasons why. When I look out here, way out here, this is now the third week of the month, I see one important feature, and that is right here. Sitting between the Hudson Bay and Greenland, we have a deep trough. And that gives us what is called the positive phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation, so NAO. Now, normally when we have positive North Atlantic Oscillation pattern, we tend to not stick around with the bitterly cold weather, in other words, leaving it there for 1, 2, 3 weeks across the south and across the east, okay? But coming out of the North Pacific, we keep seeing lows cranking out of the Aleutian Islands. They end up coming over here to the southwestern part of the United States, and they're fed on a strong branch of the subtropical jet stream, which means the pattern is not right now forecast to slow down as we progress to the end of the month. And if we just kind of average this all out and look at the upper level flow pattern, this is the thing that I see that's most important. You see, we are getting in this region much stronger jet stream flow here over, our southern area, our southern region, and our forecast area. And that to me just says the pattern that we're seeing cranking up next week seems to want to continue as parts of the North Pacific, specifically this strong branch of the Pacific jet stream, just cranks up the whole atmosphere in terms of generating storm systems as we move to December here. Okay, so this basically, wherever you are, look at how fast the winds are above you. And if you're in a region that has very strong winds, that's going to be a region that's going to see quite a bit of activity in terms of low pressure systems. That's the catalyst that kind of gets that stuff cranking out. So keep a close eye on that. And to finish this up, this was just released yesterday, so let me show you the latest long-range updates. European seasonal model. We're now looking out at December, January, February temperature, on the left, precipitation on the right. And you can see that this model is no longer favoring widespread warmth anywhere across the United States as we look out over our next 3 months. And just like we said, if you noticed, okay, look at how the winds were weaker here in the northwest and much faster here over our southern region. We can see that that is exactly where we're painting our more active storm track here with less than average precipitation, I think, up here in parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now, is this model 100% accurate? Is it the end-all be-all of forecasts? No. But we're looking here at what the models have been consistent with. And this picture you see painted over here on the right with precipitation anomalies has been pretty consistent. Okay. Temperatures, though, have definitely cooled off across the lower 48 and the most recent model run here. So we've got a lot to be watching out for this winter with a potentially very active pattern. And I think all of this is driven by the warmth we got in the North Pacific as the Indian Ocean dipole fades and we don't have much of an El Nino signal. So with that, we'll wrap it up. We've got a lot to think about this weekend. I look forward to talking again next week. I hope you all have a great weekend. Prepare for a pretty volatile week next week. Thank you.